In the heart of Warsaw, behind the gates of a seemingly ordinary zoo, hundreds of lives were hidden, lives that the world had already written off. What would you risk to save strangers from certain death? For one couple, every day was a choice between life, death, and defiance. A delicate balance of courage and secrecy that would change the course of history. The Warsaw Zoo, once a place of laughter, curiosity, and the soft cries of exotic animals, stood as a quiet sanctuary on the outskirts of a city that had already begun to taste the bitter shadows of war. In 1939, the zoo was a place of wonder for the citizens of Poland, a living testament to human curiosity and compassion toward the natural world. But the looming storm of Nazi occupation would transform its pathways and cages into a haven for humanity in its darkest hour. Antonina and Jan Żabiński, the keepers of this menagerie, moved among the animals with practiced ease, caring for lions, elephants, and monkeys with a dedication that belied the growing tensions outside their gates. They understood instinct, nurture, and vigilance not just toward the creatures under their charge, but, unknowingly, toward the future lives they would shelter. Antonina, with her delicate hands and resolute heart, observed every detail of the zoo, from the pacing of a restless tiger to the subtle tremors of human fear. That soon seeped into the city itself. The streets of Warsaw whispered with rumors, the news of German invasion spreading like wildfire, carrying terror and uncertainty. Families were torn apart, neighbors vanished overnight, and the once vibrant city began to shrink beneath the oppressive weight of occupation. The Żabińskis, though aware of the danger, moved with deliberate calm, continuing their routines of feeding, cleaning, and monitoring, maintaining a fragile illusion of normalcy for themselves, their son, and the animals who relied on them. This calmness would prove essential, a mask that would hide extraordinary courage in the days to come. As the Nazis tightened their grip on Warsaw, the human suffering around the zoo grew unbearable. Jews were rounded up, separated from their families, and forced into ghettos where hunger, disease, and despair became constants of life. The city was transformed into a place where every corner carried the shadow of imminent death, and every interaction could be a test of loyalty or betrayal. Antonina and Jan observed these horrors with quiet horror, their compassion deepening into a resolve that would challenge the limits of human bravery. The couple knew that conventional resistance arms, sabotage, or direct confrontation was nearly impossible, especially for civilians without weapons or official authority. Yet, they understood another form of resistance: shelter, protection, and the unwavering belief that human life, no matter how threatened, could not be abandoned. The zoo, an unlikely bastion, began to change in purpose. What had been a place for education and entertainment became a carefully orchestrated network of hiding places. Underground chambers, empty cages, and even the natural habitats of animals were subtly repurposed to shield those fleeing the relentless persecution beyond the gates. Every action carried immense risk. Discovery by the Nazis meant certain death not only for the hidden families, but also for the Żabińskis themselves. Each cage became a symbol of defiance, each passage a testament to ingenuity and moral courage. The process of hiding people within the zoo was painstaking and intricate, demanding both creativity and absolute secrecy. The Żabińskis had to blend the needs of their human charges with the routine care of the animals, ensuring that neither could betray the presence of the other. A quiet room behind the monkey house could conceal a family for weeks, while underground tunnels previously intended for storage of feed became secret corridors for those fleeing detection. Antonina's keen intuition and knowledge of human behavior were as vital as Jan's authority and practical skills. She observed every sound, every glance, and every tension in the air, anticipating the potential for danger with near-prescient accuracy. The hidden refugees were often exhausted, terrified, and malnourished. Yet the Żabińskis offered not only protection, but moments of dignity and humanity, a shared meal, a warm blanket, a whispered word of reassurance. Each act was small in isolation, but monumental in its consequence, a thread weaving a fabric of survival that spanned months and years. As the couple navigated these clandestine operations, they became masters of discretion, establishing routines that masked extraordinary bravery as ordinary care. Their home, too, became part of the network, with every room, closet, and attic space evaluated for potential use, demonstrating that heroism often hides in the most domestic of gestures, performed in silence and shadow. The intertwining of human and animal life within the zoo created an atmosphere of quiet tension, a constant balancing act between natural instinct and calculated human intervention. The animals, oblivious to the horrors outside, moved freely within their enclosures, unaware that their presence provided cover, distraction, or even an excuse to Nazi patrols passing the gates. The roar of a lion or the cries of monkeys could mask the hushed voices of those in hiding, creating an auditory shield for the terrified families. Antonina, walking among them, often marveled at this strange confluence of life and survival. Each animal was a living partner in their resistance, a participant in an unwitting theater of moral courage. Jan, meanwhile, coordinated logistics with methodical precision, ensuring that supplies were discreetly delivered and that the refugees remained out of sight. Their son, Richard, learned early that life in the zoo was unlike any other. That bravery was measured not in weapons, but in the quiet protection of the vulnerable. Childhood games intertwined with lessons of vigilance, secrecy, and empathy, shaping a generation capable of understanding both the fragility and resilience of life. Every day, every routine, became a rehearsal for the extraordinary, and every animal, from the smallest rodent to the largest pachyderm, played a role in the unfolding drama of survival. The human cost outside the gates was relentless, a stark contrast to the carefully controlled sanctuary within the zoo. Ghettos overflowed with the sick and starving, streets echoed with the cries of families torn apart, and death became an omnipresent force, encroaching on every home. Within this context, the WWII's actions were not merely acts of kindness, they were acts of moral defiance, a refusal to surrender to the machinery of destruction. They understood the stakes. If discovered, execution was certain. Yet each risk taken was a declaration of humanity in the face of inhumanity. Their courage was not loud or ostentatious. It was quiet, deliberate, and profound, expressed in the careful planning of hiding places, the provisioning of supplies, and the reassurance of trembling families. Antonina documented these lives with meticulous attention, sometimes recording names, histories, or small personal details, ensuring that the individual humanity of each person was preserved even in secrecy. The zoo, once a microcosm of natural wonder, became a microcosm of resistance to living, breathing testament to what could be achieved when ordinary people confronted extraordinary evil with extraordinary resolve. It was here, amid the cages, the trees, and the careful shadows, that the WWII's legacy began to take shape, an enduring example of courage that would ripple through history long after the war ended. As months passed, the war deepened its grip on Warsaw, and the city transformed into a landscape of fear and scarcity. Curfews, random searches, and the constant threat of deportation became the rhythm of daily life, while the ghetto swelled with thousands of souls crammed into spaces meant for a fraction of that population. Within this maelstrom of oppression, the WWII's intensified their clandestine operations, aware that every small decision could have life-or-death consequences. Their zoo, still outwardly a place of routine care for exotic animals, was a delicate web of hidden passages, false walls, and secret compartments, each designed to shield those whom the Nazis sought to exterminate. The logistics of survival were immense. Food had to be procured, sometimes stolen or bartered under dangerous circumstances, and delivered without arousing suspicion. Heat, water, and sanitation had to be maintained for dozens of frightened and sick individuals. Antonina, moving with almost supernatural attentiveness, monitored every sound and every movement within and around the zoo, her mind constantly calculating the risks, anticipating patrols, and imagining escape routes in case of sudden raids. Jan, equally vigilant, managed the mechanical and practical aspects of hiding people among the animals, often working late into the night to modify enclosures, construct false walls, or ensure that any accidental noise from a caged lion or barking dog would not betray their human occupants. The operation was a symphony of careful planning and moral courage, conducted without the benefit of recognition or reward, relying only on faith in the resilience of human life and the decency of conscience. Each refugee brought with them stories of unimaginable suffering, tales of family members lost to ghettos or massacres, of streets turned into killing grounds, and of the constant presence of fear that haunted every step. Antonina listened to these accounts with profound empathy, knowing that beyond physical protection, what these people needed most was acknowledgement of their humanity. She provided not only food and shelter, but emotional solace, often singing softly to children in hiding or tending the injuries of adults too weak to care for themselves. The refugees, initially strangers, became an extended family, Their survival depended not only on secrecy, but on the psychological fortitude nurtured by the Żabiński's compassion. In return, the hidden individuals contributed to the daily life of the zoo, helping clean cages, tend gardens, or move supplies, all under the cover of normal zoo activity. Every act, however small, reinforced a fragile sense of agency, reminding those in hiding that they were not entirely at the mercy of the world outside. The relationship between protector and protected was fluid and reciprocal, defined not by hierarchy, but by mutual reliance and shared risk, a living testament to the moral complexities of survival in wartime Warsaw. The presence of children added another layer of urgency and delicate care to the Żabiński's operations. Young lives, often traumatized by the loss of parents or siblings, required constant attention and emotional stability. Antonina's motherly instincts became a shield, offering comfort and maintaining a semblance of routine that preserved the children's sense of safety. Simple rituals, a whispered bedtime story, a quiet game in the corner of a room, or a shared piece of bread became acts of defiance against the dehumanization they had endured. The children, sensing both fear and hope, learned to navigate the complex environment of the zoo, understanding when to be silent, where to hide, and how to trust the careful movements of their guardians. Each small gesture of normalcy, from the patting of a dog to the tossing of food to a monkey, was infused with profound symbolism. Life continued, even when the world outside had surrendered to chaos and brutality. The Żabiński's attention to these details demonstrated that heroism was not only in grand gestures, but in the patient, meticulous preservation of dignity for those who had been stripped of it. The risk of discovery was omnipresent, a shadow that darkened every moment. Nazi patrols occasionally passed the gates, scrutinizing records, questioning staff, and listening for irregular sounds. A misplaced footstep, a whispered conversation, or an improperly secured door could mean immediate execution. The Żabińskis cultivated a remarkable composure, masking fear with calm, and practiced intricate routines that blended seamlessly into the appearance of ordinary zoo operations. Jan, whose knowledge of the zoo's architecture was unparalleled, could predict the safest positions for hiding people when an unexpected visit arrived, while Antonina's observational acuity ensured that no detail, however minor, escaped attention. Even routine activities like feeding the animals or cleaning cages became rehearsals for crisis management, teaching both protectors and hidden families to respond with quiet efficiency. Under extreme pressure, the stakes sharpened every decision, transforming ordinary gestures of care into extraordinary acts of courage. Each day survived without detection reinforced the fragile belief that, against overwhelming odds, humanity could endure, even flourish. In defiance of hatred, amid the constant danger, moments of unexpected levity and humanity persisted, infusing the grim environment with the faint light of hope. Refugees shared whispered stories of their past lives, recounted memories of family gatherings, or described distant landscapes that no longer seemed attainable. Antonina encouraged these recollections, understanding that memory was a lifeline, preserving identity when the world sought to erase it. The zoo itself, with its cages, trees, and animal inhabitants, became a living metaphor for sanctuary, its paths and enclosures symbolizing the fragile boundary between life and death. Each successful day, each hidden family that remained undetected, represented a triumph over the machinery of oppression. Antonina and Jan's courage was not celebrated publicly. There were no medals or speeches, only the quiet gratitude of those whose lives had been preserved through ingenuity, dedication, and profound moral conviction. The stories of the hidden families intertwined with the sounds and movements of the animals, creating a tapestry of survival, resilience, and unyielding humanity. In this delicate balance of life, fear, and hope, the Żabiński's heroism took shape, a model of quiet defiance whose echoes would resound far beyond the gates of their sanctuary, challenging the very notion of what it means to resist evil with courage and compassion. As the war trudged onward, the Żabiński's sanctuary became a critical node in a larger, clandestine network of resistance. Messages, contacts, and safe passage were coordinated with other brave individuals who risked their lives to move people between hiding places. Antonina maintained careful correspondence, often under the guise of mundane letters or records for the zoo, disguising coded information that would guide families safely to Warsaw's outskirts or into allied safe houses. Every message was a thread connecting lives in peril, a fragile lifeline that demanded precision, trust, and unyielding courage. The complexity of this system was staggering. for each new arrival increased the strain on resources and the risk of detection. Food had to be rationed, water carefully measured. Sleeping arrangements alternated between hidden compartments, attics, and repurposed animal enclosures. The refugees, already traumatized, depended on the WWII not merely for protection, but for the restoration of a semblance of normalcy and dignity. The couple's efforts transcended the practicalities of survival. They were, in every sense, acts of moral resistance, affirming the inherent value of life against a world intent on destruction. The zoo itself transformed into a theater of extraordinary tension and delicate choreography. Each enclosure, each path between cages, each routine maintenance task became a carefully calculated act, balancing the safety of the animals with that of human lives hidden in plain sight. The roar of a lion or the chatter of primates could serve as cover for whispered conversations, while the dense foliage around the grounds offered concealment for those moving supplies or guiding newcomers into hiding. Antonina's attention to detail was unmatched. She could sense the subtle change in the animal's behavior, anticipating noises or disturbances that might alert the patrols outside. Jan, ever the pragmatic architect, constantly modified structures to create new hiding spots, reinforcing walls, constructing false floors, and ensuring that every possible entrance or escape route was secure. The zoo's very existence, a space that had once symbolized curiosity and wonder, became a living emblem of resistance, a place where survival demanded ingenuity, courage, and unwavering vigilance. Each day presented new challenges, unpredictable inspections, the arrival of new refugees with unknown histories, and the ever-present threat of betrayal by collaborators or informants. Yet, the WWII navigated this web of danger with remarkable composure, guided by their steadfast moral compass and deep empathy for those whose lives had been imperiled by war. The psychological weight of constant vigilance was immense. Antonina often found herself awake for hours in the dark, listening to the hum of the city outside, imagining the patrols, the street violence, the families crushed under the machinery of oppression. She bore the emotional burden of every life entrusted to her care, each one a responsibility that could not be shared or delegated. Her empathy was both a source of strength and a heavy anchor, grounding her in the gravity of the situation while testing the limits of endurance. Jan, too, carried the invisible weight of leadership, responsible for practical safety measures, the morale of the hidden families, and the strategic decisions that could determine life or death. Their son, Richard, grew up in this unusual crucible of human and animal life, absorbing lessons of courage, discretion, and the fragile beauty of survival. Childhood for him was intertwined with moral instruction, each day revealing the stark contrast between innocence and the brutal realities. Outside the zoo walls, the family unit, though small, became a resilient nucleus of hope, demonstrating that the bonds of care, empathy, and ethical responsibility could endure even in the most extreme circumstances. Amid these pressures, moments of extraordinary humanity illuminated the darkness. Refugees would celebrate birthdays, share small victories, or quietly mark religious rituals in the secrecy of hidden rooms. These moments, seemingly mundane in ordinary life, carried immense significance. They were affirmations of identity, culture, and the human spirit's refusal to be erased. Antonina encouraged such expressions, understanding that emotional sustenance was as critical as food or shelter. Children played quietly, learning the delicate art of silence while still experiencing fragments of joy, while adults whispered stories of home, remembered music, and clung to fragments of their pre-war lives. Each smile, each whispered laugh, each act of creativity became a small triumph over the forces determined to obliterate them. The zoo's animals, oblivious to the human drama around them, continued their routines, their presence simultaneously comforting and functional, masking activity and providing a semblance of ordinary life. In this interplay of survival, courage, and subtle joy, the WWII demonstrated a profound understanding of resilience, that the human spirit, nurtured even under the most dire circumstances, could endure and thrive. The ethical complexity of their mission became increasingly pronounced as the war dragged on. Decisions that might have seemed minor in peacetime, who could be accommodated, how resources were allocated, or how to respond to unexpected visitors now carried moral weight of the highest order. Antonina faced situations that tested her judgment and compassion, weighing the immediate safety of one family against the potential jeopardy posed to others already in hiding. Jan's practical solutions often intersected with moral dilemmas, as the realities of scarcity and risk forced decisions. that could never be entirely free of consequence. Their courage was not reckless, but informed by an acute awareness of human vulnerability and the ethical imperative to protect life whenever possible. Every act of resistance, every hidden person, every secret corridor was an embodiment of moral heroism, a quiet, unheralded defiance that challenged tyranny without the need for weapons or public recognition. In the shadow of oppression, the Żabiński's commitment illuminated the profound capacity for ordinary humans to act with extraordinary conscience, turning a place of leisure into a sanctuary of hope, resilience, and moral courage. By the winter of 1942, Warsaw had become a city of ghosts. Snow blanketed the cobblestone streets, yet beneath its quiet, deceptive calm lay suffering beyond imagination. The ghettos overflowed, starvation claimed the weak, and the relentless machinery of the Nazis' final solution marched onward with grim efficiency. Amid this terror, the Żabiński Zoo became an increasingly vile refuge, a place where survival was possible, if precarious, and where hope clung stubbornly to life. Antonina moved with tireless determination, her every day a delicate balancing act between routine care for animals and the intricate orchestration of human survival. She navigated the hidden rooms, checked on the families crammed into the attics and tunnels, and ensured that children were fed, warm, and emotionally supported. The zoo's corridors echoed with quiet whispers, the clatter of dishes, and the occasional squeak of an animal, all under the careful orchestration of the humans risking everything to protect life. Each day without discovery felt like a triumph, but the awareness that a single misstep could end in catastrophe never left their minds. Antonina and Jan had come to understand that heroism was measured not in recognition, but in the steady, unflinching commitment to life in the face of unimaginable danger. As the months turned into years, the scale of their operations grew. Families who had managed to escape the initial roundups arrived at the zoo, often after harrowing journeys through occupied Poland. They came with exhaustion etched into their faces, carrying stories of loss, cruelty, and betrayal. Yet they found, within the zoo's gates, a fragile sanctuary. The Żabińskis had learned to anticipate the needs of each individual, to provide sustenance, comfort, and a quiet reassurance that they were not alone. Jan, with his intimate knowledge of the zoo's architecture, continued to adapt enclosures and storage spaces into functional hideaways, constructing clever partitions and hidden compartments that maximized safety while minimizing detection. The animals, unaware of the human drama that surrounded them, became unwitting partners in this enterprise of survival, their routines providing cover, their sounds masking the presence of those in hiding. Antonina documented these lives, noting names, ages, and personal details, preserving their humanity against the forces that sought to erase it. In doing so, she created a record of courage and compassion that transcended the immediacy of survival, capturing the moral essence of resistance amid horror. The psychological burden on the Żabińskis intensified with each passing day. They lived with the constant knowledge that discovery by the Nazis would result in immediate execution, not only for themselves, but for every life they had sworn to protect. Each knock at the gate, each unexpected visitor, each routine inspection of the zoo was a test of composure and ingenuity. Antonina's emotional resilience became a lifeline for those in hiding. She provided comfort with a quiet touch, a whispered word, or a gentle song, sustaining fragile spirits through the terror outside. Jan's practical skills ensured that structural modifications, supply deliveries, and risk assessments were conducted seamlessly, creating the illusion of ordinary daily work while shielding lives from imminent danger. Their son, Richard, absorbed these lessons in courage and vigilance, growing up acutely aware of the fragility of life and the profound responsibility of compassion. Childhood for him was inseparable from moral education, each day reinforcing the values of empathy, prudence, and courage in a world riven with cruelty. The family's commitment was total. There was no separation between personal life and heroic duty, between ordinary existence and extraordinary moral courage. In the midst of the sustained tension, moments of profound humanity emerged, illuminating the darkness with fragile light. Families marked birthdays quietly, children played softly in hidden corners, and small rituals of religious and cultural observance were preserved, providing a sense of continuity and identity. Antonina encouraged these acts, recognizing that psychological sustenance was as critical as food or shelter. The quiet laughter of children, the whispered stories of home, and the gentle songs sung to comfort the frightened created an emotional bulwark against despair. The animals, continuing their routines obliviously, became symbols of resilience and continuity, reminding those in hiding that life could persist even under the shadow of destruction. Each day survived, each family protected, and each act of compassion represented a profound defiance of the oppressive regime outside. The WWII's courage was a silent beacon, demonstrating that moral heroism often manifests not in grand gestures, but in the careful, persistent protection of life against overwhelming odds. Yet the war's horrors were never far away. The roundups intensified, the ghetto uprisings were crushed, and the city was scarred by violence, fire, and death. News of atrocities traveled through the underground network, carried in hushed tones by those who had managed to escape. Antonina and Jan confronted these realities with a mixture of grief, determination, and steely resolve. Every new arrival at the zoo brought both hope and heightened risk, reinforcing the fragility of their enterprise. They were forced to make impossible decisions, balancing the immediate safety of those in hiding with the uncertain threat posed by adding more lives to the sanctuary. In these moments, their courage was not blind heroism, but a calculated, morally grounded commitment to protect life wherever possible. Each day, each small triumph of survival became a testament to the human capacity for empathy, ingenuity, and steadfastness in the face of unimaginable adversity. The zoo had transformed from a place of leisure into a symbol of moral resistance, an enduring emblem of courage that illuminated the darkest corners of history. As the war approached its final, brutal years, the stakes for the WWII's and those they protected only intensified. Warsaw was a city reduced to rubble, its streets echoing with the screams of the oppressed and the relentless march of occupying forces. Yet within the confines of the zoo, life persisted, fragile but defiant, a testament to human courage and compassion. Antonina's vigilance never wavered. Each day she checked the hidden compartments, reassured frightened children, attended to the needs of adults who had survived horrors unimaginable. Every routine task carried immense weight, for the presence of those in hiding was a constant challenge to the Nazis' totalitarian control. The zoo, in its paradoxical duality as both place of life and symbol of resistance, continued to shield hundreds of souls from the machinery of death. Each successful day was not merely a triumph of survival, but an assertion of humanity, a profound moral statement that even amidst atrocity, the instinct to protect, nurture, and preserve life could prevail. The emotional resonance of their heroism was magnified by the human stories intertwined with the zoo. Families, once torn apart, found fragile hope within its walls. Children learned to trust again, to play quietly, to experience small moments of joy, and to believe that a future beyond fear was possible. Adults, burdened by grief and exhaustion, regained a sense of agency through acts of cooperation and resilience. The WWII's unwavering support allowed each individual to reclaim pieces of identity and dignity, reinforcing the ethical foundation upon which their sanctuary was built. Antonina's careful attention to personal details, names, histories, and rituals ensured that each person's humanity was honored, a subtle yet profound defiance against the Nazis' attempts to reduce individuals to mere statistics. Every whisper of comfort, every discreet provision of sustenance, and every act of meticulous concealment was a thread weaving together the moral tapestry of survival. The zoo was more than a physical shelter. It had become a spiritual refuge, a living monument to empathy and courage under siege. Yet the constant tension was never far from their hearts. Each unexpected visitor, patrol, or rumor of betrayal could have spelled immediate disaster. The WWII's lives were defined by perpetual vigilance, a delicate equilibrium between hope and fear. Jan's practical genius and Antonina's perceptive intuition were tested daily, their partnership and trust forming the backbone of the operation. Even the animals, integral to the success of the sanctuary, added complexity to their work, requiring attention and care while simultaneously masking human presence. This intricate dance of life, secrecy, and moral courage exemplified the extraordinary burden carried by ordinary people under extraordinary circumstances. Each decision, no matter how small, carried immense weight. Each act of protection was an assertion of defiance against the forces of oppression. Their heroism was not born of ambition or desire for recognition, but of an unwavering moral conviction that saving lives, however dangerous, was the right and necessary path. As the war drew closer to its end, the impact of the WWII's courage became undeniable. Hundreds of lives had been preserved through their tireless efforts, families reunited, children shielded from death, and countless individuals given a chance to rebuild their futures. The Warsaw Zoo, a place that had once celebrated curiosity and wonder, now stood as a monument to human resilience, ingenuity, and moral fortitude. The story of Antonina and Jan Żabiński transcends the confines of history books. It embodies the timeless principle that in the face of incomprehensible evil, acts of courage and compassion can illuminate the darkest moments. Their legacy is not measured merely by survival, but by the affirmation of humanity in the most dire circumstances, a reminder that ordinary individuals, guided by conscience and empathy, can challenge tyranny and preserve life against impossible odds. After the war, when Warsaw began the slow process of healing, the survivors carried the memory of the zoo and its keepers with them. Stories of refuge and moral bravery echoing through generations. Antonina and Jan's quiet heroism had created ripples that extended far beyond the gates of the zoo, demonstrating the power of empathy, vigilance, and unwavering ethical resolve. The cages that once contained animals now serve as enduring symbols of sanctuary and courage, testaments to the profound impact one couple's courage can have in shaping human history. Their story, immortalized in memoirs and historical accounts, reminds the world that heroism often exists not in grandeur, but in the quiet, persistent commitment to protect life and dignity against overwhelming darkness. The Zookeeper's wife, through acts of love, courage, and moral fortitude, changed history not through weapons or armies, but through the profound power of conscience and the unwavering belief in the sanctity of life. In every hidden corridor, in every safe refuge, and in every preserved soul, the echo of their bravery endures, inspiring future generations to confront injustice with courage, compassion, and an unyielding commitment to humanity. The story of the Żabińskis teaches us that true heroism isn't about fame, it's about courage, compassion, and protecting life against all odds. If this tale of bravery inspired you, hit that subscribe button and join us in exploring the stories that remind us why humanity matters.